Really appreciate you having me here today. Really excited to talk to you guys all about future fields and what we're doing to enable cultured meat and cellular agriculture production. So with that, today I want to talk about life and food, and most importantly, why it's important to develop a major component of our next food system, cell ag, sustainably. So why do we care about sustainability? Why do we care about the state of the earth in 100 years when no one here watching today will be around to see it? It's because someone else will be, our kids, the future generations of humans, future generations of animals, and really every other living species will be. We work for a more sustainable future for them. I have a daughter, she's 2 years old now. And she was born right around the time that we started Future Fields. And I'm sure all the parents and aunties and uncles, grandmas and grandpas watching right now feel that same sense of urgency that I do. We align our work with the needs of a planet in peril for them. That's what we're protecting, and that's what's at stake, life. And life is everywhere. Let's take a minute to stroll down memory lane to our very first biology class in school where, you would have learned about the circle of life. As kids, we learned that animals consume nutrients through plants and other animals. Those animals die, their bodies decompose and return nutrients to the soil. And this cycle feeds generation after generation of plants, insects, and everything else that we find in the soil, which in turn feeds us as humans. And, we used to be really good at maintaining this natural circle of life, or at least we used to be pretty good at not disrupting it too much. Some of the oldest methods of farming dating back to the dawn of agriculture were no-tillage methods, which maintained the integrity of the soil's ecosystem. The foundation of this cycle really is the soil. It's the basis of the ecosystem. It's the very bedrock of our food chain. For meat production and for crop production, the soil is the common foundation for everything. And as long as we do anything related to plants and animals for food production, it will continue to be. And think for a second, have you ever dug your hands into rich, healthy soil? Pause for a second and remember what it felt like. If you haven't, imagine what it might feel like. What does it smell like? What does it look like? It's moist, it's dense with organic matter, and it's teeming with life. Insects, bacteria, fungi, all these different systems performing services in the soil's ecosystem. And keeping this ecosystem healthy is critical to food production and feeding the world, because 95% of our food is directly or indirectly produced on our soils. And a shortage in any one of the 15 essential nutrients required for plant growth will significantly limit crop yield. And to root this in something like cell ag, this includes crops for things like hydrolysates and sugar cane, for things like glucose in the basal media. So even cultivated meat production and cell ag require a healthy soil ecosystem. And of course, so does food production. By 2050, agriculture production must increase by 60% globally in order to meet the ever increasing demand for food. And sustainable soil management is really critical to hit those numbers. The need to protect and nurture what we love, our people and our way of life, has driven the need to scale. Humans have had to maximize yields in order to scale food production to feed nearly 8 billion mouths and the billions of animals that are raised in industrialized animal agriculture. And we know that need is not going away anytime soon. This dramatic scale and yield maximizing function has had severe side effects. It's disrupted the natural cycles of our soils and in our food systems. To maximize yields, we've resorted to methods of industrialized monoculture, which has fed so many cheaply and efficiently, but at the same time has ruined biodiversity and left soils devoid of life. With the balance out of whack, we're forced to mine the earth just to jam nutrients back into the soil so we can keep this machine going. It's a very unfortunate reality of scaling our food system. According to a United Nations study from 2017, 1/3 of the planet's soils are degraded due to modern agricultural methods, and monocultures tops the list of causes to be blamed. Other processes utilized in industrialized agriculture are also quite destructive. Mechanical tillage of crops causes countless deaths to forest animals. Pesticide and insecticide use is also a major contributor. There was a study that estimated that 16 quadrillion honeybees were killed by insecticide use in the UK alone over the past 20 years. This is humanity's MVP in vegetable crop pollination. Anyways, my point is, when we think about the problems with our food system, we need to take a more holistic view. It's not just animal agriculture that needs fixing, it's the entire system. I truly believe that CellAg has the greatest potential to fix these problems. I wouldn't be here presenting today if I didn't. Alongside truly sustainable practices in agriculture, plant-based alternatives, it is our best shot at fixing our food system. And certainly everyone here is well aware of the benefits of this industry. I don't feel like I need to go into a lot of detail on that. And, you know, a lot of people have articulated it better than I ever could. And I really like this quote from Churchill because even he knew almost 100 years ago the absurdity of making food the way that we do right now. Unfortunately, we haven't escaped that absurdity yet, but every day we get a little bit closer because of the work of the great minds in this industry. Now, a lot of the initial analyses of cell ag production and specifically cultivated meat were and still are quite optimistic. These analyses describe, many of the significant challenges to be solved to make cultivated meat production a reality, but it demonstrated that while challenging, it can be done. For example, the Delft TEA here did a fantastic job of explaining through a number of different scenarios how we could get cultivated meat production down to, price parity with conventional products. And scientists, of course, are a very skeptical bunch, but we still hold an optimistic view of the future for cell ag and cultivated meat production, and rightfully so. There is hope. And then this article came, published in the Counter a couple months ago. We were dealt a pretty significant blow to our optimism. This article basically described the commercialization of cultivated meat as a Sisyphean task. They said it could never be done. And it felt like this really did rock our community. There was so much buzz about this article, and many industry champions were quick to respond. But it wasn't the first article that made similar statements of doubt. So why did this one hurt so bad? And I think it hurt because there was an element of truth to it, and we all knew that. Turns out growing meat outside of the animal is really hard, and scaling it is even harder. Simplifying a bit here, but that's really the basis of the author's argument, that we cannot scale cultivated meat production and cell ag economically. But I think where it's done the most, though, is showing us what we all know is there, an almost incomprehensible need for infrastructure. In fact, the underlying TEA for the article really highlighted this in the statement. We gaze into the abyss of 10 orders of magnitude. 10 orders of magnitude is a pretty hefty challenge. We know that we're not currently equipped for this level of production, not even close. Even if we converted every beer brewery on the planet to cultivated meat bioreactors. The media requirements alone for this level are unprecedented. Even from the more optimistic Delft TEA, it still demonstrates the need for about 41,000 liters of growth media to produce just over 3 tons of meat. So based on that ratio, to produce about 10% of the US's demand for meat, we'd need about 16 billion liters of growth media. And, we're a recombinant protein company. So let's say we focus on those, and just looking at one recombinant protein in particular, say insulin, which is critical in basically every growth media formulation. Typically, it's used in culture around 20 milligrams per liter. So based on that, based on 16 billion liters, it equates to about 320 metric tons of recombinant insulin. That exceeds the current global production capacity for insulin. So even if we dedicated every therapeutic insulin manufacturing facility on the planet to inputs for cultivated meat production, we'd still come up short. And that's just for 10% of the US market. Humbard's analysis that was highlighted by the counter leans on this 10-ton non-existent manufacturing facility for monoclonal antibodies. And while he acknowledges that this type of facility does not even exist, it does highlight the massive demand for infrastructure if utilizing legacy expression systems. This type of scale exceeds, typical antibody production. Scalability, it seems, is not just a burden for cultivated meat producers to bear. The entire supply chain has to scale, and this time it has to do so sustainably, or we're doomed to repeat the problems of the past. It's 320 metric tons of insulin just for 10% of the US market. Existing systems really just aren't built for this sort of scale. It's not feasible in any reasonable amount of time. And time is something, unfortunately, we're running short on. Adding salt to the wounds, we know that the climate clock is ticking. We need solutions to these problems, and we need them fast. The latest IPCC report highlighted the sense of urgency with the climate crisis. We don't have decades to figure this out. We need as many irons in the fire as possible. And the situation is so bad that we're employing last-ditch efforts like geoengineering into the strategy. And of course, we have a Mars escape plan that's being worked on by Elon. This really is code red. But there is hope. Again, I wouldn't be here if I didn't believe in the ability of cell ag to fix all this. Yes, cell ag is not inevitable, like some have said before. Yes, it's going to be very hard. But just like the GFI responded, it's way too early to write it off. We cannot afford to not invest significant resources into its development. But to make it work, we need some serious innovations, and we need to significantly bolster the infrastructure to do this. Basically, we're going to have to science the shit out of this. And that's where Future Fields comes in. We see this infrastructure gap from the B2B side, and we're working tirelessly to fill it with a new innovative system for recombinant protein production. We need unprecedented scale to make cultivated meat work, and we need it at groundbreaking low cost. That's why we built the EntoEngine, a first of its kind insect-based expression platform that's engineered for scale and sustainability. We're utilizing one of the best studied model organisms on the planet, Drosophila melanogaster, AKA the common fruit fly, to produce high functioning recombinant proteins at unprecedented scale and low cost. Our system gives us pretty significant cost advantage. When it comes to the challenge of scaling costs and the infrastructure gap, the upfront CapEx is exponentially lower for our system. With our EntoEngine, we don't have the mountain of costs that are associated with some hypothetical 10-ton facility. Our infrastructure is inexpensive, and our mini Drosophila mansions are completely modular and rapidly scalable, unlike bioreactors, which I'm sure we all know are extremely expensive. We're building, path for food safe production, given the precedence of insect-derived products already being used in food all around the world. We know how important the regulatory path is with novel food production. We've been investing a lot of time and energy into this. In fact, we've been meeting with the FDA pretty regularly about pursuing GRAS status for our growth factor products, and they have indicated we are on the right path for that. And finally, we have the ability to produce the most sustainable recombinant proteins on the planet. The EntoEngine platform is possibly the only expression system with the potential to use completely upcycled inputs. We built this platform with all of these things in mind: cost, scale, food safety, and most importantly, sustainability. And when I say we can scale fast, I do mean that. This is what we've accomplished so far. We launched our first product, FGF2, in February of this year. And at that stage, we were quite literally producing just enough for our own in-house testing. And as we started sending out samples, we decided we needed to boost our production capacity. So we hired a fantastic team of engineers who developed this completely modular scale-out system that allowed us to hit 10,000 liters of supplementation capacity within just a few months. And we're continuing to build up that capacity well into the future. This is a snapshot of how far we've come since February this year and where we're going over the next 10 months or so. So this is specifically for our FGF2 products, but you can assume very similar trends with all of our recombinant protein products. Part of the reason we have such certainty in our scaling trajectory is, again, because of this scale-out system that we've developed. Again, it's a very modular system, so we don't run into any unforeseen challenges that often come with scaling up a biological system. So we can say with a fair bit of certainty, this is what our scaling trajectory looks like over the next 5 years. Again, this is specifically for FGF2, but we anticipate that our production will hit about 2.5 million liters of supplementation capacity per month by 2026. And the nice thing is we can also trace that directly to the footprint that would be required because of the modularity of our system. So to hit this scale, it actually requires less than 2,000 square feet of dedicated facility. One of the challenges with scaling any system becomes consistency in production, especially with biological production. How do you develop a production system that produces consistent products? And again, there's a greater challenge to this with biological systems because of their inherent heterogeneity. And we know how important it is for these inputs to function consistently from batch to batch. Shown here are 3 different production batches of our FGF2 product in comparison to a competitor. So this graph shows the number of population doublings that we observed every 24 hours in our C2C12 cells when cultured in media with our FGF2 compared to a competitor. And so as you can see, not only do we see a faster rate of proliferation, but very consistent results across all 3 batches. And this is something that we have seen in our customers' hands as well with their own cell lines. So a 25% faster rate of proliferation, which with what we see with our FGF2 may not seem like much, but because of the exponential growth of cells, that actually means you'd have about twice as much cell mass in about 4 days. So it's quite impactful. Now, talking about everybody's favorite topic, which is cost. Scaling only matters if we can achieve costs that enable commercialization of these products. It only matters if we can scale cheaply. So similar to our scaling projections, we have a fair bit of certainty in our cost projections. So this is our cost projection for our FGF2 product. And to be clear, this is pricing, so the actual amount that we would be offering to cultivated meat companies, not our actual cost of production. So we currently offer our FGF2 for about $150 a milligram. You can buy it off our website right now for that price. You can just add it to your cart and check out. It's like Amazon for growth factors, only better. And as we continue to scale into the future, the benefits we see from economies of scale alone will drive our production costs down tremendously, which we believe will follow a trajectory that looks something like this. Ultimately, we know we need to get well below $1 per milligram with something like FGF2, much lower for other protein targets like albumin and transferrin. But we believe we can hit these numbers within the next 5 years or so. We also have a transferrin product available. Albumin is something that will be made available very soon, along with things like prolactin and insulin and other bespoke custom targets that we're working on with our partners. You can see a complete product roadmap on our website as well if you're interested. So again, we turn to the services of our ecosystem. We steward the rearing of our insects and pay homage to the role that insects play in all food systems. Regenerative agriculture, pollinators deployed for vegetable crops, even the crops that would produce competing products to ours, insects are there. And you know, with this whole climate thing, if we don't get it right, insects will be there long after we're gone too. And as we look to new systems like cellular agriculture, we really need to widen our view of the problems with our food system to make sure we get this right, or we're doomed to repeat the problems of the past. In the beginning of our story, animals' life and healthy soils beget the requirements of food, a balanced ecosystem operating in harmony until we came along and scaled life out of the equation. And now here we sit staring across a chasm of challenges. With the looming climate threat, we don't have the luxury of hoping for a miracle home run. We need to be focused on base hits. We need to focus on real, tangible steps in the right direction towards a solution to sustainable food production. As an industry, we do face a mountain of challenges, but Future Fields is very proud to be a part of this as we play some small part in the next agricultural revolution alongside all of you. Thanks everyone for your attention. Thanks again to Ahmed and the other organizers of this great event for having me, and I'm happy to take any questions now.